Hello and good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to the fourth hands on workshop and AMA session under the Informatica's Data Engineering Hackathon 2024. I'm Ara Lakshmi and I'm from Team Hack to Skill. I'll be your host for today. So, this is just a heads up that till now we have covered three of the Informatica's AI powered cloud services, that is, cloud mass ingestion, data profiling and quality, and cloud data integration. So feel free to check out the resources section in your participant dashboard to go over the topics again. If you face any queries, you can reach out to us over our support email. So the primary agenda of today's workshop is to get started with automating business processes, accelerating transactions, and fueling real-time analytics with Informatica's cloud application integration. That is to be followed by a Q&A session with our expert. So feel free to share your queries in the chat section. So we have our trainer with us who will be guiding you with the concepts and help you with the hands-on demo. So let's welcome Sorabh Agarwal.
Thank you, Ari Lakshmi. Guys, my name is Sorabh Agarwal. Let me share my screen first so I can give you my intro.
Sure.
Uh, and can you confirm, Arya Lakshmi, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Can you see it, Arya Lakshmi? The slide deck presentation?
Yes, it's visible.
Perfect, perfect. So, good morning, good evening, folks. Good afternoon, folks, as well. I don't know from where you're joining in, but welcome to this session of Cloud App Integration. And I call this session API and App Integration. And we'll talk about why we call this API and App Integration. By way of introduction, my name is Sorabh Agarwal. I'm the Senior Principal Product Manager in the Cloud uh, Product Management team at Informatica. And like Arilakshmi mentioned, you guys have seen some of the services on this platform. You've seen cloud mass ingestion, you have seen data profiling, data quality, and you have seen cloud data integration. So I'm going to cover one of the most widely used services on the cloud platform, which is called application integration. And because application integration is an API implementation platform, so well, there are APIs and you have API management as well. So I'm going to cover a bit of API management as part of this presentation. So I'll just quickly jump into what we do and how we do it. So I'm going to give you an overview of the use cases that we can solve through API and app integration. Uh, there are three broad use cases and categories that we try to cover in our service. And if you would look at it, you will find some of them actually is overlapping with data integration capabilities, but there are certain differences that I will indicate to you as and when the presentation goes through. So the first and the very most common use case is real-time API and event-based integration. See, it's all about integration. It's all about integrating through various means. So you can integrate in real time. So the key here is it's integration in real time, which means it's not batch, it is real time. So as and when the information is available, something gets automatically triggered and then you have your integration completed. It is not scheduled, it is in real time. And that's the key difference between data integration and application integration, where things are more real time versus things are more batch oriented in the case of data integration. In the case of data integration, you will find that it's more about volume data, but in the case of real time application integration, it is more about trickle feed data. When I say trickle feed data, it is row by row processing. So every input is just one row. It's not millions of rows of data integration processes today. So you will find some synergies in your last presentation that you might have seen on data integration, but the theme remains the same. The theme is you want to ensure data consistency between applications, and this is done through APIs and event-driven application integration. So we use APIs, messaging, PubSub, all the various formats of being able to read data and write data, but the key here is it's all done in real time. So that's one of the big use cases that today we serve to our customers. The second big use case that we serve, I think, which is even more common than the first use case, is where we can perform business process automation. So we call this process integration because in general, that's a bigger category than just calling business process automation. And I'll indicate to you why I say that. So in general, if you look at it, and we will have subsequent slides, which we'll talk about in terms of what the examples are of business process automation that we solve through app integration. But at a very, very high level, it's a multi-step process. The reason I say it's a multi-step process because there are a bunch of activities that have to happen uh, in the journey to automate a business process. For example, if you think of employee onboarding, there are a bunch of steps that have to be taken care of to automate the end-to-end process. So we can automate and integrate business processes, and we can do this in a hybrid environment. So we can do this for applications which are on premise, or they can be in cloud, or they could be hybrid. But it doesn't matter because we support all different runtimes and all different environments, and also we support talking to different applications as well. The second flavor of this is about automatic user workflows, which is a unique capability that you will find with app integration. And I will give you, towards the end of presentation, I'll give you some examples of where you can do some hands-on lab on it. But this is where we allow our citizen integrators to being able to leverage the power of automation. Being a naive user, they can use user workflows, and they can still work with data in interactive mode. And we call this self-service automation because, like an automation which starts and which ends with no prompts in the middle, this is more about you start something, you get to see the progress of it happening. So you get to see screens on your desktop or your laptop, wherever you're using it. You get to see the data which has come through. You get to input more information, and you can get the integration going in a self-service automation fashion. So that's the second big use case. And the third use case that we generally are able to achieve because we are a good API implementation platform. So all of these orchestrations and all of these integrations that you create as part of the first and the second use case, all of these can be exposed as APIs. Now, that makes it cool because now everything can be triggered, embedded from a remote location. So you can actually, if you have an API URL, you can embed these orchestration, these complex business processes into your HTML pages, for example, and you can drive your automation from there, your integration from there. So this is pretty unique. So we can create business processes, expose them in APIs. These processes could be business processes, could be composite processes, could be even data services, for example, right? So you can even use this to expose data as a service through OData semantics, and we will see some use cases in the subsequent slides. You can expose your APIs to internal and external partners. Well, that's a use case that we have. You can make it discoverable. Now, this is where our sister service called API Manager / API Center comes into picture, where while CAI or App Integration provides API implementation platform, the API lifecycle management, which is about API governance, is taken care of by API Manager and API Center services. And with that service, where we have a close connection between these two services, will allow you to make your APIs discoverable so people can discover the APIs. And then they can put governance rule on top of these APIs, which allows them to monitor these business services or APIs and control the API usage. So let's just jump into all these specific use cases and do a deep dive into what these use cases are. Now let's look at the first one, which is a real-time API and event-based integration. If you look at the problem statement, and it's a pretty common problem that today we have. If you look at different applications, each of these applications have overlapping requirement. For example, if you think of a CRM system, and if you think of a, let's say, expense management system or invoicing system, for example, right? There are good amount of overlap, and there is a use case where you need to sync information between these two applications because you obviously cannot maintain a single system doing all the stuff, but you have different applications doing different things for you, which suits your requirements, but then there is an overlap. So how do you keep them in sync? So that's one of the biggest problems that we have today. And in general, if you look at these applications are operating in silos. So they don't have native connectivity to talk to different applications. They need something external outside the application where they can actually start integrating with these different applications. And for the end user, it starts to work because although they have multiple applications to work with the data, but these can be synced up together through some external means, which is where Informatica comes into picture through app integration. And it's not easy, by the way. I mean, it sounds very easy that why it's just about synchronization, but then there are a whole lot of stuff around it, in terms of, what happens when there's a failure, what happens when there's, a network latency. So there are like bunch of other things that makes it pretty hard. And That's where app integration service comes in very handy. So if you look at the proper use cases around these problems, and if you look at our specific implementation, we allow front office or back office application integration. So think of an order processing scenario, or think of a financial inventory management scenario. For example, if you want to automate your inventory management system, you definitely have a requirement to kind of get all these apps working together. So, for example, if you have a Salesforce order coming in, you want to propagate this Salesforce order to your SAP system in real time, and that will be done through something like app integration, for example, right? Then you may also want to sync in real time. It's a same it's similar to the first use case, but it's a bit different because now you are talking about not just integration, but integration as a ways of syncing between different applications in real time. So it's a proper well-defined use case where you want to do a real-time sync of things like accounts and codes and program data, bunch of these things. For example, between, let's say, Siebel and Salesforce, and Oracle and Salesforce, and that could be like Salesforce and SAP, and that list goes on and on, right? So in general, if you think about this specific use case also plays pretty well in the areas where you want to modernize your legacy applications. So if you look at Siebel and Salesforce, well, the first time when you are when you want to modernize your application from, let's say, Siebel to Salesforce, or let's say, for example, from any other ERP to Salesforce, CRM to Salesforce, what you will do is the first time you will probably do a data integration job and you will get the data in there. But over time, you tend to maintain these two different systems. And then, so you need to keep the systems alive. And that's where real-time integration comes in very handy, right? So let's look at different proper ways of identifying these patterns, so that at least this is where we play in. So, for example, like I said, the use cases are front office, back office app integration, and then real-time sync of various entities within these applications, and the business entities, for example. But if you hear the words like APIs, if you hear something like real-time, ESB, messaging, I mean, that gives an indication that this is calling for integration because, well, it's all about, how do you have different applications working together. So, for example, ESB providers are TIBCO, Oracle, WebSphere, Oracle, MuleSoft, bunch of these things, right? So, and then if you look at messaging, then you have JMS, Kafka, AMQP, AWS. So this is where you will notice that we need to have connectivity for all these applications, which we do. And this is how we are able to read from one application and write to another application and vice versa, but do this all in real time. A little bit more about this. So you can integrate your applications using APIs. Uh, these days, every month you will have new applications coming in, and some applications being phased out. So, well, how do you work with that? Well, you can actually talk to these applications through the REST-based interface or SOAP-based interface. Well, SOAP is not too common these days, but well, REST is. So you can talk to these applications using APIs. So you can integrate using APIs with these applications, right? And you can even integrate with messaging. So both APIs and messaging. And like I said earlier, you can supplement the bulk data integration of data sets with real-time processing, and which is most common in the case of legacy app modernization. Well, the whole idea is to ensure data consistency with real-time DI. So this is where we kind of have an overlap with the data integration side of things, but the major differentiator is that we work in real time and that we work with trickle feed data. So I will jump on to the second problem statement to indicate to you that what are our strengths in that area. If you would notice, applications have data and they have data that works best for them, and there is a need to integrate between different applications, and you cannot change the data in the applications, right? So you have to be able to integrate between applications so that you can read the data from one application, use it to perform some orchestration, and then perform read data from other application, perform some sort of a join between those two to kind of make it more sensible. and then perform the automation or do certain activities with that, right? And given that these applications can be on both cloud and can be on-prem, you need to have a capability where you can actually talk to these applications both in cloud as well as on-prem. So one of the biggest use case in that area would be cross-application process integration. So when I say process integration, I'm saying orchestration, right? So business process automation, these kind of things. So for example, in the case of education sector, student onboarding is a very, very common example where a new student joins in, and then there are a bunch of things which have to happen to get the student on board. Or, for example, think about employee onboarding, where if an employee joins a company, then probably that employee gets entered into a workday system. But then after being entered in the workday system, this employee has to go through multiple hoops and loops to be registered into, let's say, expense management system, create a service now ticket for laptop, procurement. Maybe there is a financial management tool available within the enterprise and they need to get a login there. Maybe they have to claim for some, let's say, relocation, for example, and they have to get access to different applications, like, let's say, Jira, right, or other applications, for example, right? So all these are, in a way, they are multi-step. There are steps in each of them, and then there has to be a mechanism that once a student comes into workday, that this entire thing becomes automated, and that provisioning happens perfectly fine in an automated fashion with no manual intervention required. So this is where we have our strength, where we can automate the entire end-to-end pipeline, and that typically is called business process automation, but we have generalized to call it process integration because we talk to different applications in the journey of performing a business process automation. So that's one use case. The second use case is supporting our customer service like personas. So this is more towards the self-service automation, where the automation still is an automation, but the automation gives you a capability where you can peek in on what is happening within the automation. So it's kind of a prompt coming on the screen or some sort of a display coming on the screen to give you information as to where the status, where the things are, what information is already being fetched in. Can you provide some more inputs to move forward? So it's more like a visual way of doing automation, but then it's more apt for personas like customer service, where they have to service customer calls and they have to be able to work with the data on the spur of the moment, and they really need to have interactive access to data. And that's where this is where it's really handy. If we do a deep dive on this specific use case about the cross application process integration, uh, uh, you would notice that it kind of chimes well with the word orchestration, because all you're performing here, you're trying to orchestrate different activities in some fashion to make the automation work. So the keywords you should be listening for is orchestration, process. Like I said, onboarding is a very common, very, very common business process that people tend to automate. Provisioning, multi-step process, business process management, automation, which is pretty catchy these days, but that's a reality. So it automates workflow capabilities, approval, customer service, interactive APIs. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? So if you hear these words, it really means that you need some orchestration capability to perform automation of some sort. Uh, Let me give you a sense of the one where I spoke about the interactive access to data, which is made more seamless by giving you capabilities to display the real-time data as an end user. For example, let's say call center representative, right? So we call this functionality as guides, uh, and this is mainly useful for frontline employees who are non-technical. For example, customer service representative or bank tellers who really need to be guided, like they need to have a guided tour of some sort to be able to perform integration, because their main job is to, for example, serve the customers, but not about um, knowing the technology per se, but they are able to follow steps, right? So typically, we have something called guides which help you do that. I'll give you an example of that too. But if you hear the word like flow, workflow, BPM, task automation, call center, this is the place where we play with guides. Where this is where the guides will actually be handy. So what it really does is it gives you something called screen steps, which allow you to, and then we have a native integration with Salesforce. So, for example, let's say you want to have a call center representative servicing request using Salesforce as the CRM or the customer or as a customer application where you have all your data for customers, then you would be able to perform all these operations within the confines of Salesforce, but not even need to leave Salesforce and just work with that application. Behind the scenes, the power would be coming from the app integration guides. So if I look at the example of one such scenario, so think about a customer service representative taking a phone call from the customer who wishes to know, for example, current balance and let's say uh, query about the recent payments. And then eventually when they hear this information, they want to also create a case, open a case to indicate that there's something that needs to be done from the application side or from the provider side. So what's going to happen is there's going to be an integration which is end-to-end flow, but this integration will allow you to have UI screens in the middle. So as and when the screen comes in, it gives you some question and you can ask this question to the person on the call, and then based upon their answer you can fill in this information on the screen step, and then you can say click continue, and it goes forward, fetches the information from the system and present on the screen again. And then you can again ask that question to say, well, this is the status of your account. What is the next step that you want to perform here? What do you want to check? For example, do you want to look at the cases? Do you want to look at your balance inquiry? What do you really want to perform? And this way it's kind of a guided tool where users can go through this journey um, based upon the way integration has been defined. So I'm going to move on to the third use case, which is about API implementation and management. And like I said earlier, this is where we work with our sister service called API Manager slash API Center to perform the API governance. And app integration provides you a mechanism to create APIs. Now, if you look at the problem statement here, well, API is a buzzword, but API is real. It is there. API is the way to move forward. And why it is the way to move forward? Because the integration becomes a whole lot simpler when you have APIs available for everything that you have, right? So it allows for better integration. It could be between partners, could be your customers, could be your own applications, could be across application, doesn't really matter. But the moment you have APIs, then your system is available to be accessed, provided you have security guidelines being fulfilled and compliance being met. So uh, application integration plays really well in this area because, like I said earlier, all these complex orchestrations, they could be, by the way, app-to-app integrations, or they could be pure play process orchestration, let's say employee onboarding. But each of these orchestrations can be exposed as an API. And then this can really be exposed to your partners and internal lines of business to share data uh, with security, because this is where your API management will also come in, where you can govern your APIs and ensure that nobody, abuses the APIs in terms of calling them so many times that your system is under load, or they are calling in such a way that they can access sensitive information because you have put, higher level of authentication on this governance layer of API management, right? We have many customers who are using this for things like membership management, especially in the hospitality industry. Uh, One of the biggest use case of APIs that is getting pretty common these days is data as a service, which we also support, wherein you can expose your data via OData semantics, and you can embed this in third-party system, for example, let's say Salesforce or any other applications to serve data as a service use case. And if I were to talk about how do you identify that this is the use case you are looking for, and this is where Informatica can come in handy, um, you should look for keywords like API management. So if you hear somebody talking about API management, API portal, they're talking about monetization, they're talking about SOAP, REST, even for example GraphQL, OData, um, async versus sync mode of communication. Well, that's where API plays really well. So that was a brief about the app integration side of things in terms of an overview. I also want to give you some resources in terms of how do you make progress because what I gave you was a very, very high level information and overview on app integration and API management to some extent. But I want to give you more information where you can go and try these things hand on, because there's nothing better than trying things hands on. So I'm going to give you three labs. And obviously, when you go through the recording, you will get these links as well. These are self-sustained labs in the sense that these URLs will give you information in terms of a step-by-step guide to perform these labs. They are not very long labs. They would probably be 90 minutes to 2 hours lab, but it will give you a good sense of how the things really work in the world of app integration. And it will cover all the things that I mentioned, but probably there'll be a lot more basic than the complex thing that we can do in our environments. So the first lab that we have, which is on your screen right now, is about APIs and API management. And in this lab, what we really do is we are automating a very, very common um, business process, which is called order initiation. So how do you initiate an order? So the flow would be something like, it's something similar to the way you actually go and place an order on, let's say, Amazon website, just that they have this profile information. So some of the information is already available to them. But in general, if you think about it, customer goes on a website or any other place and they say, I want to place an order. And when they want to place an order, they want to give some information in terms of what they really want to purchase from the store. So they could be, they might give an item name and item count, and they might give personal information, for example, let's say customer name and customer email address, right? What really happened behind the scenes is once they provide this information, there is an integration that you will create as part of the hands-on exercise, which runs behind the scene, and taking this information, it will check in the inventory if the item exists or not. If the item is found, it will get the details of the from the inventory in terms of what kind of margins are on this item, and this is purely for the vendor to understand how much profit they are making. But in general, for the customer, it is useful because now they will have a confirmation going through to say that your order has been placed, because there's enough quantity available in the inventory for them to get this request processed. So they get an email with the confirmation details. So the vendor gets an email with the margins that they are making, and the customer gets an email with all the information that they need to be able to track this sales order at some point in time. Well, if the item is not found, then obviously it responds by saying that item is not available. So let's find out something else that you want to order. So it's a very simple exercise, but it will give you a flavor of how things are really in the case of app integration, and give a sense of how the use cases are accomplished in app integration, and the URL is here. So that's the first lab. The second lab that we have, which is again available on the specific link below that you see on the screen, is a very common loan procurement process, right? So the normal flow would be a bank and counterparty wants to check if the loan registration has been received by the loan mortgage company. And if they really have received it, what they really want to do is they want to have somebody assign this case so that they can follow up with the customer and service this loan. So what's really going to happen is there's going to be a website or some other program which will call an API, which is created through Informatica app integration or cloud app integration service, with a loan ID number as an input. And once this input is received by this integration, it will search for this loan ID in Salesforce to find the loan. And it will also find out the application details with which they can figure out which property is being attached to this loan. And once they have this information, they also want to probably access a third-party website to get a valuation done on this property. And in our case, we have chosen Zillow as an API. By the way, Zillow is a real estate database company which has information in terms of the valuation of certain properties in North America. So for a given specific property, if the address is provided, they can give you the max valuation and the min valuation. And based upon this information, then you will create an entry in the Salesforce with all this information for the case representative. So you'll create a case in the Salesforce, and then that representative can actually work with the customer directly and process the loan. Pretty simple exercise, close to 90 minutes, and all the information about how do you make it work is available at this URL. It will give you information in terms of a video on what it does, a step-by-step guide, and it will also give you a running sample if you just want to import something and get started faster. You can even do that as part of it. And the third and the final one is where we also want to introduce you to event processing. This is a bit more involved, but a very exciting exercise, which is more about uh, inventory management, automated inventory management. So the scenario is, I'm just using names here to just explain what I'm trying to solve here. But let's say there's a consumer called Kathy who wants to place an order for an item on, let's say, some website. And let's call this retail store, which is exposes functionality to a website called as My Store. So typically think of this as Amazon. So you browse through all the items in the inventory, and then you say, I want to choose this, and then add them to the cart and say checkout. And then eventually you also want to see some sort of a confirmation on the screen to indicate that your order has been placed. And you probably get more information in terms of the time it takes and all that stuff. But again, this is a very, very basic use case we are trying to highlight here. So you get to see after you place an order and after adding things to the cart and saying checkout, you get to see an email which talks about which mentions in terms of what your order is, and some information about the order. Well, while customers are buying stuff, there is an administrator on the My Store side, which is also have to ensure that inventories are adequately stocked to be able to process any subsequent requests. For example, Kathy buys so much that some of these stocks are so much depleted that they have to be replenished. The admin on the My Store side has to be able to monitor the situation. Well, obviously, they can also get notifications, but they should be also able to monitor the inventory to ensure that they're adequately stocked for any subsequent requests coming in. So they also are able to browse through all the inventory, again using guides, and then based upon which item has gone below the threshold, they can place an order to their supplier to replenish the stocks with a click of a button. Now, this specific exercise is pretty basic in nature, but obviously, if you are excited about trying these things, then you can always make it a bit more involved by making it a bit more complex by saying, okay, tomorrow is Black Friday. Do I have enough items in my inventory to be able to support the rush that is going to come through on the next day or the next week, for example, right? Or maybe it's a weekend coming in, or maybe it's a Boxing Day. So how do I stock more my inventories to be able to handle the rush? So that was the second persona in this case. The third persona is Som, the supplier, who is listening over these requests coming from Asim, the admin, uh, requesting for the replenishment of these stocks, that the items in the inventory. And once they have, and they, by the way, have many people, many subscribers. So Asim is just one of them. But Som is listening on this specific queue for all this information. And once this information comes to Som, he's able to process this request. And um, in this scenario, we just kind of simulate the delivery of the items through an automated update of the inventory itself. Well, obviously, in the normal scenarios, there would be some physical logistics move to take care of pushing the item to the inventory. But at least in terms of the system of reference, the system of reference get automatically updated based upon uh, the request being processed or not. So this is a bit more involved exercise. Again, you can make it more exciting, but all the information that you require to perform this exercise is available at the link mentioned below. And that was my last slide. Happy to hear any questions and take any questions and answer them now. So Arya, where do we see the questions here?
Yes, Sorabh. Uh, at the moment, we don't have any queries in the chat
Okay.
section. So, participants who have joined us, if you have any questions, feel free to post it in the chat. We are waiting for like another 2 to 3 minutes. If we have, then we'll move on to answer them. So, Saurabh, till we receive any questions, I want to ask that We are just 4 days away from the submission deadline to close, right? So, do you have any strategies for the participants of hackathon? How can they build a great idea?
Well, I would like to just say one thing, that be innovative, right? Like I'm old school, but the world right now is so innovative with all the Gen AI stuff going on that sky's the limit. So what I gave you was just a preview, and you might have heard in the previous sessions also a bunch of these technologies that can help you, but you can do a lot more. So my recommendation would be that I know that there are only 4 days left for submission, but the labs I gave are pretty simple. If you just try these, at least the first workshop which I told about API and API management, um, you will just realize that when you can talk to different systems through APIs, then you can even talk to OpenAI for that matter using APIs. So why not try different things? Try talking to LLMs and try talking to all these different systems, and then sky is the limit. Because when it comes to Gen AI, then I don't know what to say, because uh, I would be at loss of words to tell you what use cases can you achieve, but you can achieve fabulous things. Some things that we also want to build in as part of our knowledge base, but definitely looking forward to great submissions from the team here in this area. This is just one example from my side, but again, a couple of examples if you try. I think it's very simple and straightforward. You will get to know what else can be achieved in terms of making a great submission.
Right, definitely. So the participants do note that strategy that Saurabh just shared. And we have one question in the chat. Let me show it to you. Ritik is asking, do we have any AI integrations?
Well, I think it's kind of telepathic in some nature, because I just spoke about that. So, Ritik, to your question, when you say AI integration, like I said, all of these applications, to me, AI is also an application, because these are exposed through some technology. For example, OpenAI. OpenAI has this API interface. So you can talk to OpenAI through APIs. And that's what we do in the app integration world. You can talk to any system through API. So you can talk to even OpenAI, for example, and you can do magical stuff. So that's a great question, but I kind of answer this question in a different way. But I think, yeah, the answer is yes. You can use all these technologies in the context of app integration through API integration. Yes.
Right, awesome. So, Ritik, if you have any follow up questions, you can post it in the chat, or we have a Discord channel specifically for a data engineering hackathon where you can ask your queries with the experts themselves. Awesome. So, Ritik is saying thanks a lot for answering.
Thank you for asking questions. Any more we can take up?
Yeah, Sachin is asking, is there any CI or CD use cases included in IDMC?
Well, CI/CD use cases are inherent in IDMC. IDMC is a platform supports CI/CD, because I mean any platform should support CI/CD. So do we support as well. But if your question is about Sachin, if I just expand on that a little bit, assuming certain things, can you do CI/CD using app integration? Well, you can. We have samples available on our knowledge base where you can actually perform CI/CD using app integration. So, just to answer your question, CI/CD capabilities exist in the IDMC platform that's natively available. And if your question is about can we do CI/CD using app integration, that is possible as well.
Awesome. So, we don't have any further queries in the chat. So, Saurabh, do we wrap the session?
Well, I would, yeah, we can wrap up because I want to give time to people to work on these labs. And then it's only
Okay.
4 days left, folks. So you have to really think hard about, because it's very competitive world. So think really hard about this and try those labs. But I would also wrap up by saying that thank you so much for listening me, for hearing me out. Um, I am evangelizing what we do, what I do, but again, it is for you guys to try out and appreciate and give us feedback in terms of what we do is the right thing or not. So looking forward to feedback in the future as well, but looking forward to great submissions, and so that we can learn from you folks as well.
Definitely. That was really sweet of you, Saurabh. So, with that, we have come towards the end of our fourth hands on workshop and AMA session. So, you can find the recording and all the resources shared by Saurabh in the resources section of your dashboard. So, thank you everyone for joining us and asking the queries. This is just a gentle reminder that the idea submission and registrations deadline for the Informatica's Data Engineering Hackathon is closing in 4 days. That is 11th of March. So, if you have any queries, feel free to mail us or post it in our Discord channel. Our hackathon mentors, juries are present over there and they'll help you solve your queries. So, see you tomorrow for another thrilling workshop. Thank you,
Thank you so much,
everyone.
folks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Saurabh.
Thank you.